Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Peace Podcast. This has just helped me understand why I'm a people pleaser, whatever that looks like. And oftentimes we walk around the world in such a way where we avoid conflict, we avoid people's negative responses, we are telling ourselves that the safest avenue to take in life is to make the other people around us happy. And seemingly that looks like kindness. I'm kind because I do what people tell me to do. I'm kind because I act in a way that benefits them. I'm kind because I overextend myself and self-sacrifice in order to give them what they need or do what they need from me. But there is a hidden cost to people pleasing, because in order to become and to be a people pleaser, you have to be someone who self-abandons. And when you're self-abandoning, there are a slew of things that you're losing. At the crux and core of it, you are losing your ability to hear what God needs from you and what God requests from you and how to be obedient to God's will for your life, because you can't serve two masters. You can't be at the will of the people that you're trying to please, but then also listen to what God is telling you to do. Because oftentimes God's will in your life may contradict what other people are asking you to do. And if you have an allegiance to people pleasing, then you may stifle what God is asking you to do in order to please the people around you. And sometimes conflict with God seems less risky in the moment than conflict with the people, because you don't want people to be mad at you. You don't want people to be frustrated with you. You don't want people to come at you any type of way other than with love and kindness. And side note, even people pleasing doesn't prevent that from happening, because quite usually the people that you have to people please to remain in relationship with are the people who are takers and will continue to want more from you, and nothing that you do will ever be good enough. But that risk seems more risky than the risk of telling God no or not listening to God. But in reality, God may be quiet, but his reaction to your disobedience is going to be very loud when you actually go internal. And the only way to consistently please other people is to silence what God is telling you to do. Because though there are so many people that you're listening to, there are so many voices that are coming at you, it is impossible to consistently make them happy while at the same time listening to what God has for your life. But it can be really difficult to hear what God has for you and to turn to what God is telling you and what He is telling you only when you've developed some childhood trauma responses that say, if I can just keep the people in this situation happy, then everything will feel at peace. And we learn to do that so far to the point where we do not hear our own internal needs and we do not hear what God is asking us to do. So we may be in an immense amount of emotional pain, but we don't even hear our own pain because we're too busy trying to ensure that someone outside of us doesn't feel pain. We may be so consumed by our own reaction to their emotions that we don't even know how to emote what's just happening inside of us. We don't know how to feel what's going on inside of us. Our reactions, responses, feelings, the way that we live our lives are directly connected to how these people respond to our no, to our yes, to our willingness, to our love, to our adoration. And we take it so far as to attach our own understanding of self and our own self-esteem to how other people are responding to us. So when you're a people pleaser, and this is going to sound really harsh, but essentially nothing exists in you and with you unless somebody else is acting upon it, unless they're validating you, unless they're giving you a gold star for what you've done, unless they're telling you that you're a good person, unless they're telling you that you're loving and kind and whatever. What ends up happening in that space is that you are at the will of someone else's opinions. And so what you believe to be good may not even be close to what they believe to be good. But if you're waiting for them to tell you that you're good, then you're basing your feeling of being good off of their perspective of you. And you might not even agree with what they believe to be good in the first place. It also brings to light the fact that you might have all of these people in your life with differing opinions. And if you're waiting to be validated by these people, you are not understanding that in order to do what one wants you to do, you may have to disappoint the other. And what ends up happening, because we have developed these really keen abilities to do what has kept us out of the space of harm's way in our traumatic experiences in life, we shapeshift. And then people start to think we're double-minded, we're sometimey, these words that people use, because every person we're around changes who we are. Because what we're really seeking is the validation from people, the accolades from people, the approval from people. And so because that's what we're seeking and that is our focus, we will move and shift and shape into these people that are very different based on what we know will gain the approval of the people that we're in relationship with. And there's some research behind this, and I like to bring the research, but the first thing we have to understand is that people pleasing is a nervous system response. It is not a conscious behavior unless you're using it to manipulate other people, which people do and may have been done to you. But for the most part, if you're an actual people pleaser that doesn't have this intention of manipulation, you are trying to keep yourself safe. And your nervous system is responding in a way that is the fawn response. So we've talked about fight, flight, freeze. This fawn response tells you, I need to prioritize what other people think, need, and ask of me to maintain my own safety. And if you think about it in childhood, that makes perfect sense. Because if I need to be quiet and I need to be serving and I need to be in my room with the door closed in order to make my caregivers feel less burdened by me, then I'm going to do it. I'm trying to gain their adoration. I want to feel loved by them. And if these are the things that I need to do to make that happen, then I have a inherent need to feel loved by them. So I'm going to do the thing that makes me feel that. But as we get into adulthood, those continued nervous system responses can cause huge issues, and ultimately your subconscious is manipulating people in order to get what you need from them. So I'm going to act this way around this person because I know that it will keep the peace. But if you're not being authentic, then what you're trying to do is receive their approval. So it is technically a form of manipulation. There's no malintent behind it, but you're just trying to keep yourself from dealing with anything that might be chaotic by using the fawn response to do it. The other thing is that approval seeking is really rooted in fear, and it's a fear of rejection. I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to disappoint other people. So I am going to seek their approval by all means necessary. So if I have to shapeshift, if I have to become something different, if I have to go against my internal needs in order to do what this person wants of me, I'm going to do it because I fear their rejection over me being inauthentic. And there's some research by Harriet Breaker that connects people pleasing to external validating patterns. So if there are people that you, and you may be one of these people, that you are in relationship with or you are noticing in the world, and the goal of their moves and the way that they communicate and the way that they respond to people is to gain external validation from other people, then they probably have a deep fear of rejection, and so they've learned to people please. And if you grew up in a family system where you were easily rejected for the smallest of things, it only makes sense that your subconscious parts would say, I'm protecting you by forming behaviors in you that make you people please so that you can avoid the pain of rejection. And when you bring that into your adulthood, what ends up happening is the people around you are aware enough to, one, people who care about you are aware enough to, one, know that you're inauthentic. And they want you to be authentic. They want you to be 100% honest in who you are. So when they start to realize that you're being inauthentic, they're going to call you out on it, because they're going to say, well, in one instance you said this and did this, and in another instance you said this and did this. And when I ask you to do things, maybe the chaos meter doesn't go off with me because you know that I don't want to cause conflict between us. But when someone else does it, you react differently because you know that person is going to create conflict and you don't want the conflict. And so they'll start to mention your double-mindedness in the way that you're behaving in the world. Someone who may in fact love you but is benefiting from your people-pleasing behaviors won't call it out because they know that you will work really hard to gain their validation. So even if they know that you have approval-seeking behaviors, even if they know the fawn response is your way of protecting yourself, they'll use it to benefit them because they have known you long enough to know what they need to say to you, how they need to be to you in order for you to go right into your habits of people pleasing. And if your people pleasing benefits them, then oftentimes they'll just continue to have that happen because it's a benefit to them. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that chronic people pleasing leads to identity loss. Because how, in fact, will you be able to understand and know who you are if you are so used to abandoning that person in order to gain validation from others? How are you going to understand who God has called you to be if your main course of action is to abandon who you are crafted and created to be to gain external validation from other people? So it's not surprising that when you are a chronic people pleaser, that you don't have a true root in your identity and who you are. If you really sat with yourself and asked yourself, who am I and what do I feel is my purpose in life? It's going to be really hard for you to find it because you're going to wonder if those same people are going to approve of that. You're going to wonder if those same people see you as those characteristics that you believe are true of your identity. And if they don't, then you'll question your identity because their validation of you holds higher weight than your own understanding of you. And if you have the opinions and validating comments happening more and being more listened to by you than the words of God and your own internal knowing, then again, not surprising that you're going to believe those things, that you're going to continue to do the behaviors that gain you the validation and the approval of other people. Because the more you listen to those things, the less you listen to your inner voice and to God's voice. It's kind of like when you're in a toxic relationship and somebody that you're in a toxic relationship with who is understanding of the fact that if you have external influence, you're going to listen to them less. They will seclude you from your family members and your friends. They'll tell you that those people don't care about you, that you're bad, they're bad for you, that they're selfish or some other horrible comments that they make, and eventually you pull further and further away from them, and the voice that is the loudest in your life is the toxic partner. So you start to believe that what they say is true. The same thing happens when you're a people pleaser. You are looking for the external validation, oftentimes in the form of instant gratification. I did something, they approved of that thing, they gave me that approval, words of affirmation, and maybe they talked about me to other people, so I got the praise, etc. And that's what I need to feel validated in my existence, and people pleasing fuels that validation. The more you listen to those voices and the louder that they are, the less you're going to listen to your internal knowing, and the less you're going to listen to what God has to say about you. Because those people also know that if you're true to yourself, and if you're understanding of yourself, and if you know what you need and you know what God says about you, then you may be more apt to shut down what they're saying, or to not listen to their voices, or to not need their validation, and that won't be serving to them. And even if they do it subconsciously, where they make you feel like they know more about what's best for you than God does, or they know more about what would be a success in your life than you do, even if they're not doing it consciously, still in doing it, they're showing you that they gain from your need to have their validation. Also, I know we hear a lot about boundaries, and something that's true of boundaries is, because it's become kind of like a buzzword, if you don't understand what boundaries are and what they're for, then you may call punishment to other people a boundary. And that's not what boundaries are. Boundaries are what you need to keep a relationship and restore self-connection and restore your connection to God. So if what someone else is doing makes you feel like you're self-abandoning, or that you're going against what God has to say, or you're not able to hear his voice, it's keeping you from being obedient to his voice, then that thing needs a boundary. Because if you don't put a boundary around it, then you're going to continue those behaviors that are people-pleasing behaviors. Boundaries are what you do to keep a relationship safe and to keep your connection to self and God safe. So I'm not saying, oh, because you do this, then I'm going to punish you by keeping this from you. It's not that, but it's saying, and I use gossip as a really good example because it's something that I think we come across often, and it feels maybe less like it has a risk to it, but it really is a risky behavior to participate in. And so we might say, I love talking to you on the phone, but when you start to gossip about people, I'm going to end the conversation because I really don't want to participate in that. That's not saying, oh my gosh, I think that you're a horrible person, and because you talk about people, then I'm not going to answer your phone calls, right? It's saying, I love having this connection with you. But in order to remain true to what I believe internally and what I believe God wants me to do, I can't participate in these type of conversations with you. It may sound something like, I know you really want me to help you with this thing, but that behavior, that project, that relationship goes against what I believe to be good and true and what I know God is telling me. And so I can't participate in that thing. I love you and I'm willing to do all of these things to keep our connection alive, but that thing I can't participate in. That boundary is meant to keep the relationship, but you also see how it's keeping your intimacy with yourself. It's keeping you connected with yourself, but it's also keeping you connected with God. And so we need to understand that if we are people pleasing, that cannot happen simultaneously with keeping boundaries that keep us self-connected and keep us God connected. So if we're people pleasing, then we're probably a little bit disconnected from God and a lot of it disconnected from ourselves, because validation means more to us than those two relationships and what they have to say about us. And so if you notice yourself people pleasing and you notice that that thing is happening a lot more often than you listening to yourself and listening to God, you have to understand that the way to fix that is to set boundaries. And the way to set those boundaries is to ask yourself, what does God say I need to do? And what do I feel in my soul is the right thing to do? And what would a boundary look like to keep this relationship, but also to set those boundaries? Sometimes God may require you to end that relationship, but if he's telling you to keep it and just put some guardrails around it, then you can do that as well. But the way that you figure out what they are, if you're a chronic people pleaser, is by asking God, what do you think is right in this situation? And asking yourself, what do you believe to be true in this situation? And then setting a boundary around that thing. It's not making the other person feel guilty. It's not making the other person feel shame. It's just telling them what you're willing to participate in. So if you find yourself in a space where you're constantly people pleasing, remember that people pleasing often looks like kindness, but it is fear. It is fear of rejection. It is fear of the chaos that you could create if you don't do those things with the people that you care about the most. But something you can do is notice how many things you say yes to when you mean no. Jot those things down and then ask God, what boundaries do I need to set to ensure that I remain connected to me and remain connected to you? And I promise you, he will give you those. It will not feel hateful. It may feel a little bit abnormal because you're not used to doing it. It may feel a little bit opposite of kindness because you're used to doing what everyone asks you to do. But remember that you also have to remain kind to yourself. You also have to remain kind to God. And if your kindness to others requires you to not focus so much on your kindness to yourself and God, then you have to choose. And I can tell you 1,000 times over that choosing God and what he says about you and what he has positioned in you is way more important and impactful than making sure that other people are pleased with you. Because the reality is, if someone loves you and someone wants you in their life, they will understand why you set the boundary and they will want the good thing that God has for you over their own needs to be met by you. I hope this video helped those people who are in the boat of chronic people pleasing. I'm a recoverer, so I understand this whole entire focus on life and the pattern. But I'm hoping this video helped, and I'm hoping that you share it with someone else that you think it might help. Because remember, knowledge gained and kept to yourself is selfish, but knowledge shared with the world could just be the catalyst for change that someone needs to break free from the bondage they're in and to surrender that thing over to God. I thank you guys so much for listening. Go to my socials, subscribe to those, like and follow them, subscribe to this channel, share it with someone that you know that it would be beneficial to, and thank you for being a loyal listener. I appreciate you, and I'll see you again next time.